Hi there and welcome to the channel. I'm Slate and today we are going to talk about gearing in Guild versus Guild or GvG. Now we are going to go over both defense and offense and some of you may be asking, what do you mean offense for GvG? Well, basically when you are doing your attacks and you affiliate your demon soldiers, you need to boost your BP as much as possible, and so I wanted to quickly go over some tips and tricks to help you do that at the end, but for now, let's get started. We are going to start off with the first thing that I say when you're building a defense, and that is going to be your tank. Now, in terms of artifacts, straight up Bastion Ring. That's it. There are definitely some niche options. There are a few exclusive artifacts that some people decide to do, but at the end of the day, Bastion Ring is absolutely fantastic. It increases the block count. It also decreases the amount of damage that your tank is going to take, which is absolutely fantastic and very important. And so for me, this is the easiest thing in the world. Just put a Bastion Ring on. Now, in terms of gear, there are just a few things to take into account. If you have someone like Osiris, who is a damage dealing tank, you may be tempted to put some attack on him so that he does that damage. Don't bother. Honestly, I mean, you can if you really want to, like, do whatever you want. But with something like GvG, where it's very difficult to sustain against the opposition, it is much better to make your tank tanky and then rely on damage from your DPS units rather than doing a hybrid build. So the best things that you are going to be looking for in a tank build is going to be HP and defense, and then someone like Osiris where you have those skeletons, that is when you want to bring in your rage regen or your speed so that they get their ultimate up a lot of the time. Now, in terms of sets, there are really only 3 sets that you can use, which is Guardian, Tempered Will, and Unshaken Will. Now, if you haven't got those sets, you may be tempted to use an Acephalus ring, which is the plus 10% HP. Now, if you have fantastic a set of this, then yeah, by all means use it, but I think if you're in that point of the game, you're much better off going broken and making sure that you get the highest amount of stats rather than trying to go for a set. But Guardian is really great because it means that you take 15% less damage, and the upgraded version of this is the Tempered Will, which is one of the Forge exclusives, and this also has a 15% damage reduction, but it also increases defense up to 20%, so this is absolutely fantastic. Now, the other one, which is Unshaken Will, does also increase your HP, but it doesn't have any of that damage reduction, so even though you do recover HP, it's a little bit of a trade-off effectively. So in my opinion, I would still do Guardian, and if I had it, Tempered Will as the upgrade. Now, in terms of what we're looking for on the right hand side, continuing down the line, it is basically going to be a primary stat of HP bonus, and then the secondary stats are going to be defense bonus, flat HP, flat defense as the ideal. Now, as you can see, this is very rare to get. Trying to get 3 ideal substats on a piece is kind of difficult. But this is what I mean by moving off, going for a broken if you're early on. This piece, for example, is fantastic on a tank early game if you don't have the Guardian. But I would choose to do a decent Guardian over a broken set, if that makes sense. So, the important thing is to try and get the defense on the substats. So we're going to lose HP. That hasn't really helped. Let's lose flat defense and see what we've got here. You know, we got some rage. We got some defense. We got defense and HP. And he's already geared with some defense and stuff like that. So anyway. Oh, so yeah. And then here, flat defense bonus, got a bit of attack. Now, again, I don't mind having attack bonus on a tank like Cyrus that does do some damage. That's fine, but I'm not going to do it as a primary. And then again, finally, we're looking for those defense stats like that. Now the left hand side really is only two options. You are looking at Immortal Warrior and Life Force. Again, for the secondary stats, we definitely want HP bonus, defense, and defense. And on the weapon, you can also get flat HP. So something like this is going to give a huge amount of tank onto your character, but for the chest, you're not going to be able to have that flat HP because obviously the chests themselves are flat HP. So instead, that's where you can decide, hey, I'm going to bring in something like a crit rate or different things like that. And, you know, you can be like, I'm going to bring in something like this. So anyway, then if you are looking at the overall stats of the heroes, there is going to be a bit of a range. Now, if you're very early on, something like 80k HP is going to be great and about 4k defense. And then here, as you sort of get to push over 100k, you're really looking 7, 8, 9k HP. It really just depends on how much you can get on those rolls, those substat rolls. So anyway, this is quite a good build. It's not the best build, but it is in that sort of comfortable margin. Now, HP is still king, but you do want to get some defense on there as well. So yeah, that is going to be how you build a tank. Let's now move on to the healers. Okay, so when it comes to healers, there are two main types of ways that healers heal, and that is either through HP or through attack. Either way, you are going to want to get HP on your healers because it is going to help them stay alive, generally speaking, but really the most important stat on a healer is speed. And that is because the faster they can get their heals off, the better it is, and also rage to get whatever their ultimate is, if that is something important. So there are some nuances to healers, but effectively you want them as fast as possible, and you want their healing stat pumped up, and then you also want some HP and healing effect. The ideal is around 100, but you know, you can play around with it. So in terms of artifacts, there's really only 2 for GvG, I think, maybe 3. And this one is the fantastic one, which is the Golden Scarab. It increases attack by 5, but more importantly, it increases rage regen. And that, like I said, is going to be really important for popping off those ultimates from your healers to help everyone either stay alive or regenerate their own rage. The other one that you could use as a second is going to be a euphoric orb, which increases your team's attack speed. So that is an option. And then obviously, if you do have someone like a vortex, the Elysian Epitaph is absolutely fantastic for himself. But you may decide, even on a HP based healer like this, to put on a Golden Scarab, because you're like, you know what, I want to get his shields up a load of the time. So yeah. Now in terms of gear, the best that you can get is going to be Invigoration. Now it's a little unclear as to how Invigoration works on the GvG map, but to the best of my knowledge, the order in which you place the heroes on the map is recognized. So if you put down someone and then you put down the healer with Invig, it should go onto that. If anyone has this confirmed or denied, please let me know in the comments below, because unfortunately I do not know 100% if that's how it works. But if you have people with Invig, it's going to go on at least one of them, and thankfully Invig does seem to be smart enough that it doesn't go on your tanks, unless there's nothing else to place it onto. So yeah, so Invigoration is going to be your best option, and then this Acephalus is going to be a nice second option as well. And then in terms of the stats down the line, healing effect is okay, but ideally you know, HP bonus would be nice. Attack speed is almost a must on the middle, and then again, rage or your stat or different things like that. So for something like Vortex, where he is quite tanky, we are going to be using that Immortal Warrior again on the left hand side. So what we're looking for on the right hand side is going to be attack speed, healing effect, and a bit more of HP. So yeah, this brings him up to 34, which is a bit low. You'd want him at about 40 ideally. And then this nice down to a 1.6 second interval. So like I said, speed is very important when you are doing your healers. Now for someone like a Hollow, who is fantastic in GvG along with an Elowen, you are going to want to make sure that she doesn't heal great. You need her to heal well enough that she can save someone, but you want her healing as fast as possible. So as you can see with her, the speed is at 455. Again, it's that 1.6 second interval. Elowen is at a 1.5. I mean, 1.5, 1.4 would be the ideal. But again, there isn't a very clear metric of how much speed you need in order to get that next attack interval. So what I find is if you're struggling to get the speed to that next sort of 0.2 interval, you can sort of bring it down a little bit and then invest in one of the other stats. But yeah, and the options on the left hand gear again are Immortal Warrior, but you can also use Warlord if you've got someone who's attack based, and the other option for earlier or progression in GvG is going to be Whirlwind, because again, like I said, speed is so important. So yeah, that is how you gear your healers for GvG. Next group of heroes I want to talk about is really only a couple of them, and they are your crowd control heroes, and that is basically Greed and Mari. Now the reason you bring in them is to slow down the enemy and do a bit of crowd control. So they're not actually in for damage. That is not their job. Their job is to literally do whatever it is in their kit. So take someone like Amari. Her artifact doesn't matter too much, but we do want her to get that big freeze out. So we are looking at 2 artifacts for both Greed and Mari, and that is going to be the Nightmare Samsara or the Spellcaster's Echo. Now don't do what I did and delete all your Spellcaster's Echo, because you mistook it for something else. But yeah, now in terms of the gearing, it is incredibly simple. You want them to have as much speed as possible, as much rage as possible, and then they need to survive. So what we have here is Mari is going at a 0.9 second interval. She's got that 660 speed, and then she's got that 30k HP, because I don't want her to die instantly, although they die. Direct hits will kill things, but yeah, the idea is to get her going as fast as possible. She's in a broken set because really it doesn't matter too much about her, and left hand side is going to be a Whirlwind. But for someone like Greed, where they do a little bit of damage as well, we want him raging as much as possible. So again, like I said, we are looking for enough HP that they can survive if they take a hit, bringing the speed down as much as possible. He's at a 1.6, ideally it'd be like a 1.5, but honestly he's a 3.5 attack second interval. Anything under 2 seconds is going to be getting better, but again, keep going. And then yeah, 100% rage regen would be great. I think 119 is a bit of overkill, but yeah, that is how you're going to build your crowd controllers in GvG. Next we are going to talk about the final lot, which is going to be our damage dealers, and that is going to be your fighters, your marksmen, and your mages. Now the nice thing is that they can basically be all interchangeable. There isn't like a marksman do this, different things like that, but there are 2 sets that are basically the best in slot for your DPSs. That is going to be your Soulbond Arcana, which increases the ultimate damage by 10%, and it stacks up to 5%. and then your Infernal Roar, which increases your basic attack damage by 40%. Now, in terms of, well, who gets what, I'm not entirely sure the best way to explain it. It sort of is slightly intuitive, but the way I like to think about it is basically looking at how long the ultimates are, because obviously if they're going to get a load of ultimates off a lot, then that damage is going to rack up if it's in Soulbound Arcana, and otherwise might as well get all that just like basic oomph from the Infernal Roar. So yeah, now in terms of alternate options, if you do not have those two sets, Insight is fantastic, Wisdom is fantastic, as they're the precursors to both of those. You could also use a Styx, and you could also go Broken, to be honest. Like, that's fine. But in terms of what to do, attack is king in GvG, basically. So even though crit damage is nice to have on the bottom, really we want attack bonus mains. So we're going to do, let's do an Insight, shall we? And here, so yeah, we've got attack speed, because again, attack speed, you want your heroes going as fast as possible. If this had rage regen as well, that would be the best. And then so substats, we want crit rate, crit damage, attack speed, and then ideally rage, no rage, so bit of HP maybe. Perfect. But actually want a bit more crit damage, a bit more speed. That's got a nice amount of speed, so I'd rather have that. And then here we don't have any. I must have ascended it. That's the thing, if you got good insight pieces, you ascend them to Infernal Roar. So never mind. Anyway, let's pretend this, yeah, perfect. This would be great. So yeah, and then on the left hand side, again, the best set is going to be Warlord, because it gives you attack and speed. The other options really are going to be Calamity and Annihilating Might. I would only use Whirlwind if you absolutely have to, but really, like I said, we want to be boosting that attack. So let's put him in Annihilating Might for now. Now, in terms of what you're looking for in stats, that's where it's a little bit easier. So you want as a minimum double the attack, but ideally triple the attack. Here with this Crash, we have also, don't use Crash, but he's just what I clicked on. He's got 4k attack, and I've managed to do 8k attack. Now, ideally, if I could get plus 12k attack, that would be fantastic, but of course that becomes very difficult depending on how much gear you have. And again, that's why those premium sets are good, because they have more boost to them. Crit rate, you want it 100%, or at least as close to 100% as possible. Really want to minimize how much RNG is going to be affecting your runs or the runs against you. And then speed wise, 350 speed is sort of the minimum when you're in Overlord for GvG, but you know, I think it sort of like, again, ramps up. And then rage regen, again, you want to get people popping off, so if you can get that rage regen in there, that is going to be fantastic. And crit damage, anything over 300% as a minimum, again, if you're having that. So for example, if you are going for sort of triple the attack, so let's say you're doing plus 12k attack, 350 speed, 300 crit damage, and then, you know, 50-80% rage regen, 100% crit rate. That would be the dream. That would be the dream. Do we all have that gear? No, we do not. I mean, there are some people who definitely have that gear. I think I have one that I could probably do that gear on. But if you, like, I love that saying. There's a saying that says, aim for the stars, fall on a cloud. And so, yeah, that's basically what we can do there. Now, in terms of artifacts, for your marksman, there's two that are going to be fantastic. It's going to be your Spirit Siphon, and then it is going to be your Sharpshooter Crest. For your fighters, this is when it gets a little bit interesting. Frigid Flame is absolutely fantastic in GvG. because it gives you a chance to increase that damage. You can also use a Realm Tear for some of those long range fighters. Wailing Skull is obviously always a good option, and possibly I have seen if you really needed to, but also the exclusive artifacts are going to be quite a big one. So something like an Arrogance, his exclusive artifact is pretty good. If it was leveled up, it would be great. So things like that do create a nuance, and the only sort of exception that I want to talk about is someone like an Araka, who is technically a fighter, but you put her in almost possibly as a tank. You can do a damage Araka build and you can do a tank Araka build. It would be the same as something like an Abomination, where you do want them to be a little bit more tanky, because you're using them as like a second tank effectively. And so for those guys, you are going to want to use a Lunacy Visor, and this is because it increases their block count, moving from 2 to 3, which is very important, and it also helps them heal.
Completely forgot to go over mage artifacts. There's a lot of information to get through, so I apologize for all the notes and this little snippet, but I wanted to make sure I gave you guys so much as possible. Anyway, mage artifacts, unless you are going for an exclusive, it is going to be Tear of Twilight as your best in slot artifact.
That is going to be how you gear your DPS units for GvG. So to talk about BP maxing for the other side of things, obviously gearing is important, and the heroes that you have important. Now lords are absolutely fantastic. They also give like an extra boost because they're a lord, so they're great. There are certain heroes that just for whatever reason are better at BP, like Jira and Uridin, but essentially what I found is marksmen are absolutely fantastic. Awakened heroes are really good, and yeah, lords, and there is a bit of a play with it. So for example, Crash, he's really great. Don't know why he's really great with BP, but he is. So anyway, what I would recommend that you do is at some point you just unequip basically everyone that you've got. And then you decide who is going to be. Now Setram is absolutely fantastic for BP maxing. Even at A1, you can easily get him to 100,000, which is brilliant. Getting your heroes to over 100k BP makes a huge difference in more competitive GvG, but obviously the higher up you go, the better, and different things like that. But yeah, the quick equip is absolutely fantastic. So I would always start with whatever lord that you've got, and you will notice that couple of things. Number one, Ageless Wrath is the best BP set. Don't ask me why, don't know, but it just gives the best BP, and you know, it's beautiful. So yeah, let's have a look. She's not got an artifact. Wailing Skull is the best artifact for fighters. The other ones, marksman, it doesn't really make a difference whether it's Spirit Siphon or Sharpshooter. They give the same amount of BP, but Wailing Skull gives more BP than the other maxed artifacts. So like, she loses 2000 BP. Don't know why, but she does. So yeah, ideally Wailing Skull, even though it's not what you would use on that hero, if that makes sense. So yeah, Valk is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, the next thing is Ancients are really good for BP, I guess because they're shiny, and they're pretty. And then Variants are also pretty good for BP, but Infernal Roar and Soulbound Arcana and Ageless Wrath are the main sets, because again, they're those premium sets, and like I said, Ageless Wrath is at the top. But here's the thing that is interesting. Quick Equip is pretty good at giving you a good starting point. However, you really do want them to have at least 100% crit rate. Attack speed seems to also boost BP really well, and then depending on the hero, either crit damage or attack is going to be boosting them. So you can twiddle about with it, but I would just recommend you basically unequip and just do it once, unequip all your heroes, all your DPS heroes, and then play around and auto-equip in order, and different things like that. And so, like I said, Valk is fantastic for BP, Cetrum's fantastic for BP, Silas is absolutely great. Your Lords, like I said, are going to be great. And then, you know, someone like Jira, who's A0, you know, she just has insane BP. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. You know, I love it. It's great. But yeah, make sure, you know, someone like a Cetrum where you're going to be using his artifact, switch it. Doesn't matter what to. I mean, ideally a 25. But yeah, different things like that. And then just save your sets, and different things like that. So yeah, as soon as you start to get that first unit 100 kbp over, it does make a huge difference. And definitely make sure that your Lords are very high if you have a Maw, because again, boosting that Maw is going to be really important. But obviously, the main thing is to just get as high as you can. So if your highest is 70k, 80k, that's going to be fine. Like, that is going to match with the level that you're on, and is going to help. But just do make sure that you equip them before you do your GvG attacks, because there is nothing worse than going into a run and realizing that you forgot to gear your heroes, whether that is defense or offense. So yeah, anyway, I do hope that helps. If anyone has any questions in particular about any gearing or different heroes, do let me know in the comments below. But yeah, hopefully, like I said, that gives you a starting point. There are a lot of nuances to different heroes, but hopefully that gives you the broad brush strokes. And yeah, anyway, I will see you in the next video. So until then, take care and bye for now.